Hello everyone and welcome to this multiplayer hub Fireside chat. Today we have Nee, head of games community for the Improbable Games Unity. Nee, thank you for joining.
Hi everyone, lovely to be here. Thanks for having me join, Jay. It's nice to chat to you and nice to hopefully talk to some of our developers and studios out there.
Great. So, to get things started, tell us about yourself and your experience with communities.
As Jay said, my name's Nee Nguyen. I've worked as a games community manager for over 15 years now, and that's both on indie, AA, and AAA titles. I've been a part of small studios, large publishers, and now here with Improbable tech companies as well. And all of that time, I've been primarily focused on games, communities, digital, as well as physical, and just growing them, looking after them. I'm naturally a gamer. I've always been a gamer from a very young age. I remember us getting our first ever console in the house, a PS1, which I still have, and keep in great, adoring condition. I remember playing Final Fantasy for the first time and just being utterly blown away by the storytelling. It's Final Fantasy VII, actually. The storytelling, the world, the characters, and just thinking, oh my God, this is incredible. And I'm hooked, and I want to know more, and I want to be a part of this. So that's where my passion for games began, and since then it's grown into like a love for RPGs, action adventures, simulation games. So aside from Final Fantasy, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Stardew Valley are some of my favorite games. I've spent a huge amount of time playing Guild Wars, 2 years solid. So there's definitely that passion which has combined with my work in communities to make me a very happy community manager. I'm very lucky to be working a job that I enjoy. So I think there's very few of us who can say that, and I'm lucky enough to be one of them.
What made you interested in games communities in the first place?
Well, as I mentioned, love of games, first and foremost, and that's kind of, being consistent throughout. But also what I realised as being a gamer myself and being able to go to gaming events and being involved in gaming events, be they digital or physical, was that there was a huge amount of passion and love from players for the games that they genuinely enjoyed. And I just massively appreciated the investment of both time and love, essentially, that players have for some of their most favourite games. And that's something that I share. But also, I'm just awed by it. I'm so awed by how passionate, how loyal, and how just such big advocates players can be of the games that they love and that they enjoy playing. And that's a really lovely community to be a part of if you share the same feelings and the same support and love for that game. And it's really a nice space and a nice area to be a part with, to be able to connect with other players enjoying the same narrative journey or the same experiences as you. And that made me kind of like, when I went to these events, I was just like bowled away about how awesome everyone was and how much they were enjoying the event and enjoying the games. And I, remember thinking, God, I'd love to be able to find a job that allows me to be a part of these communities, but also, just take care of them and share my love of the game with them. And that's kind of like how I began my career.
That's awesome. And can you give us a run through of your day to day with the Improbable Games Unity communities?
Sure, yeah. So I lead up our team of community managers. And essentially my job is to make sure all of our studios and our titles have the same high quality approach in terms of community engagement, processes, content, player support, and basically player activity overall. And it's working with our community managers to make sure that across the board we're all rolling out the same quality of all of those approaches and tactics and activations essentially. And day to day, I check in on how the team are doing, handle any overnight emerging tasks that have cropped up. And that's anything from like reviewing blog content that's going out, planning any additional activities that we want to be doing, or updating information about any hot fixes or patches that are going to be coming out. And then looking into our content schedule and plan and making sure that we're sticking to our scheduled list of content that we're working on, as well as the list of like weekly focus tasks that we're committed to. So every single week we kind of identify the key core things that our community need and us as a team, what we need to ensure that we meet. And then my job is to make sure that our team complete those tasks and deliver them by the end of the week so that we can then roll on and do more exciting things. And we additionally get briefs in from various parts of the other teams in the games unit for additional community work. And my job is to kind of look through those briefs, see where we can help other teams out to do community activities or community activations. And then where I have time, I hop in to engage with our communities, whether that be on Discord or in social. There's great banter always to be had with our community. So I spend time talking to our players, listening to them, hearing out what they've got to say, and just sharing stories about what we've experienced within the game as well. And that's my day to day.
That's great. And I assume that, given the number of players, it is quite an enormous amount of tasks that you need to go over in your day to day. And do you use any tools to automate these tasks? And what would you like to automate if possible?
I'd say that a lot of the work we currently do is quite manual, purely because of the nature of conversation and how we want to engage with our players, which is talking to people, making sure that we're listening to them and letting them know that we're listening to them. So that is actually quite a physical manual task because you can't really automate it, and you can't automate then the amazing conversations that come out of that, and the jokes and the back and forth of just fun banter. So the day to day is pretty manual. I'd say that we do look to try and use tools where we can to help us automate on the more statistical side of things, or on the more technical feature side of things. So, for example, we automate some of our community tasks that are related to analytics. And reporting. We use third-party tools for those. And then on our Discord servers, thanks to the bots that we run there, we can automate some really interesting, cool features, which we think from a community standpoint is really important. So, for example, feedback and bug reporting, or reporting hackers and cheaters within the game. We have bots that run for us, which help the players in the community easily report in what they're seeing, whether that be feedback or bugs or hackers and cheaters, and it then processes it through, and we can take that information in the back end, take it to the team, sit down, talk to them about it, and figure out how we can then incorporate that feedback or take on that bug report, or and deal with it in the manner that we need to be dealing with it in. So where we can, we try to use automated tools because it does make our lives easier. But the core focus of community, which is engagement and conversation, that is still very manual. And I don't, I think it's a good thing that you can have conversation at the end of the day with a real person rather than an automated bot. So we try to maintain that balance as much as we possibly can.
Definitely, that makes sense. So you mentioned analytics. What metrics do you suggest that can be used to gauge the health of a games community?
I think for us, engagement is the key one. That's one of the one well, I think that's the one for our team, especially at the stage that we are in with our games. Scavengers is in early access, so for us it's really important to be able to have our conversations with our community, hear their feedback, incorporate that feedback, pass it to the team, have the conversations with the team, and also allow our players to have those conversations as well with the team themselves. So engagement is a really, really important one. So when we look at the content that we do, whether that be on socials, blogs, or in our Discord server, they're geared to encouraging engagement, encouraging conversation and debate, so that we can maintain that one-to-one conversation between the community and the devs. So I would say that's our main important key one. It's followed though by follower growth, and then the two follower growth engagement are kind of like netted under with reach. So those would be the three points, with engagement kind of like being the leader. I think with engagement, with strong engagement, comes naturally a hopefully not as well as naturally a growth in followers who are interested in the game, who want to have that conversation with you. And if they know that there's a great space where they can have that conversation, it hopefully fosters a more open, more friendly and welcoming and inclusive community that more players can come and join in on the conversation with. And that naturally leads to follower growth, and then hopefully by extension and by word of mouth reach as well. So if others hear about the game and how much fun players are having with the game and how much they're enjoying the community, then hopefully we're also welcoming other players and other community members by extension through that as well.
That's fantastic. So let's talk about something that is unavoidable on multiplayer games. How do you handle player disputes that have no other evidence than he said, she said? For example, Bob accuses Alice of poor behavior during the match, and Alice denies the accusation.
Yeah, this is a tough one, and if I had to sum it up, I'd say do it very carefully. I firmly believe that community managers should never punish players unless there is irrefutable and really strong evidence to the case. So in the situation you mentioned, if it's just he said, she said, it's really, really difficult to understand exactly what happened. So if you don't understand what happened, you certainly shouldn't deal out any form of public punishment, because it's not fair without that evidence. So and maintaining a fair community is a really, really key, crucial thing in maintaining a healthy community. So in this situation, you'd listen to each side of the story, and you'd see if there are reliable witnesses to the incident, and you talk to them too. Ideally, if there's any, so for example, if players are in a match, and Alice does this, poor behavior, Bob accuses Alice of doing this. If they're in a match and there's been any footage that was able to capture this moment, then you try and dig for that. But like you said, if there's no evidence aside from he said, she said, it's really, really difficult to then reinforce anything at all without that evidence. So essentially it comes down to just their word against each other. And if that's still the case, what you would do is just remind both parties of the community rules and guidelines. You'd give them both a warning in this situation, because it's very difficult to confirm who was in the wrong and who was in the right. And then you'd encourage them both to report bad behavior properly through any in-game functionality that exists, as well as any other processes available on the community channels to record these incidents. And you'd encourage them as well to continue reporting that, because if this is a repetitive behavior, then sooner or later that record adds up, and the more people are able to report this behavior, then the easier it is to gather that evidence and be able to deal with the situation much more fairly. So you'd then encourage them to list down the names, the behavior, and keep a track of them. And then any other future reports as well, the same pattern behavior by the same person, then is, gets all collated at the back end. And like I said, it's much easier for a team then to go, right, this person has behaved badly on several occasions. It's not just a singular incident that has reported them. We should keep an eye on them, and we should act accordingly, according to our own game guidelines and rules. So in this situation, I'd say, talk to both parties, remind them of the rules, of the guidelines, and then, encourage them to report through various systems that you have in place, and to carry on reporting that. And obviously encourage them to both be nice, and remind them that a games community, like, we're here to enjoy the same game, to have fun with the same game, and that, they're not places for toxic or unhappy or disrespectful behavior. And in this kind of situation, that's the best that you can do without unfairly accusing someone, and unfairly punishing someone of something that they may or may not have done.
Okay, that's that sounds incredibly level-headed. I I really enjoyed that answer. That was pretty good.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's always easy to do, by any means. And actually, when you're talking to people and emotions are high, it's actually quite difficult to manage that situation. But as a community manager, you must always remember that unless there is evidence, you cannot, favor any particular side. That's not your job as community manager. Job is to be incredibly fair and to listen to both sides of your community. They're still, at the end of the day, a part of your community. You must treat them, with the same respect that ideally they show you. So, to your point about being level-headed, yes, that's part of the job. It's not always easy to do, because at the end of the day, we're also humans. But it's something that you must always have at the forefront of your mind in community management.
And what about when the issue affects a larger number of players? Say, what would be the best way to do damage control in a situation where a game change or an update displeases a significant fraction of the player base, uh, because a weapon is now overpowered or a glitch happens that causes loss of items? What is the best way to deal with these situations?
So that's actually, well, with our game scavengers, we're in early access, and the whole entire point with early access is that we're continually getting player feedback to tweak, refine, update the game. And sometimes those updates and refinements don't always make everyone happy, and that's both the joy and the learning curve of a phase like early access and closed beta and things like that, where you take that opportunity to tweak the game, to try and find that middle ground that pleases most players. But like I said, it doesn't always work out that way. So in that situation, you've always got to be prepared that yes, you're not going to 100% make everyone happy. And if there is a situation where a game change or an update significantly upsets a big fraction of the game, of the player base, then there needs to be put into place a couple of things that you should think of. So early, honest, and very player focused communication is, I think, personally, very, very key. It's something that is an approach that we have taken, and we've tried to keep very, very consistent. Like, talk to your players, let them know what's happening as early on as possible. Explain the whys and the wheres of your game plan as to, like, why are you doing these changes? Is it based on player feedback? Is it something that you have noticed within the game yourself? Maybe the gameplay balance isn't quite what you wanted it to be. So in order to balance it out here, you're tweaking something over there. But be honest with your player base as early on as possible. And I think, the earlier on and the more open and honest your communication is, the more generous and the more understanding your community is going to be. And explain to them how it's going to impact their game, and especially if it's going to impact certain elements of the game significantly, be really open and honest as to why you are doing that. I think the sooner you can embed an really honest, communicative relationship, then the easier it is to also manage expectations and provide context and understanding to the community as to why you're doing what you're doing. And I think for us, especially in a phase like early access, where we're listening to players and we're taking that feedback on, we're asking players for their feedback. So we're listening to them, we're taking that on, we're incorporating it, but obviously some feedback, we can't guarantee it will work. So we need to kind of refine and tweak it again to make sure that it does work. And that's the whole entire point of these conversations and getting that feedback. But I think if you're honest and you make it very clear with your community as to why you're doing it, and especially if it's a direct result of their feedback, then they're more likely to be understanding and supportive of that as well. So I'd say, yeah, first thing is early, honest, player focused communication. And then I think the other thing to have ready, especially when you are rolling out updates or you know that there's going to be a change coming in that may not make everyone happy, is to ensure that your player support side is ready to go as well, that they're informed as to those changes, they understand those changes inside out, and they're ready to help players out. So in the situation where you said, you know, perhaps a glitch causes, say, a loss of items, if the player support team are ready and they're prepped, they'll be able to help players out by giving back those lost items, the situation being permitting, of course. They'll be able to support them, help those players get back those lost items quickly, and also help explain the situation as to why this bug may have turned up, or if it's not a bug, explain to them, oh, you know, this isn't a bug, actually, it's something that we've rolled out as part of our latest update. We're trying out a few things. Thanks for your feedback. This is really good to get. We'll take it back to the team, and you know, you can then incorporate that feedback into potentially a next update as well. So that's the second thing. But the third thing, and I guess like it's a mix of both the two other things I've mentioned, is getting feedback from the players. So if something rolls out, if an update has gone out and they really don't like it, talk to them, understand what they didn't like about it, or maybe what they did like about it, you know, and make sure that what they tell you goes back to the team for future improvements. So be honest again with your community, whether that be through direct conversation or whether that be through tactics like surveys or polls. Talk to them and say, hey, like, we rolled this out, we heard that you really enjoyed it. What did you enjoy about it? Or we heard that you hated it. What didn't you like about it? This is your game as well as ours, especially when you're working with a community that's so heavily involved in impacting your game. Make them feel involved, make them aware that they are directly, you know, having an effect on the game, and get that feedback. Make sure that they know that feedback is incredibly valuable and it helps the team make the game into what the players want. So really listen to that feedback and give the community as many opportunities and chances as possible to be able to express their feelings in a constructive and a polite manner, of course, without, you know, being mean or inciting a hostile and unhelpful environment. Like, constructive feedback is the thing you should be leaning into always.
Great. So now it's the time to talk about the not so fun side of communities. Uh, in your opinion, is it fair to say that some games or some genres seem to attract a more toxic community than others?
I think it's fair to say that there is a very strong public perception of this, and it's easy to understand why. I personally believe that certain games and genres, like multiplayer games, enable opportunities of interaction and communication that can result in negative and toxic experiences. So when you look at a single player game, there are no other opportunities to engage with another real life human being. Your story is your own. You journey through the experience on your own. You do it at your own pace. There's no additional elements and layers of emotions or reactions coming in and kind of impacting that experience. A multiplayer game it does what it says on the tin. It's a game with multiple players, multiple other real human players with their own reactions, their own responses, and their own emotions and feelings on the game, how they're playing, etc. And so that brings in a huge and entirely different dynamic of how you play that game and how you enjoy that game. So therefore, because of the heightened opportunities of people expressing emotions, expressing their enjoyment, it can lead into a situation where negativity rises up, or people respond negatively to something that happens within the game, and that then causes a environment where players lash out, or players troll, or players misbehave. I don't believe that games of any genre or type really begin their natural gaming life by default attracting a toxic community. I don't think any game begins its life like that. I think games begin their life desperately wanting and looking for a healthy, fun, engaged community. But I do believe that toxic communities can build up easily around certain environments, and that's where I think you would face the biggest problem, is like the moment that starts building up, is how you then deal with that within that game and within that genre. But to your original point, like, is it fair to say that some games or genres attract a more toxic community than others? I maybe, this is my own personal view. I don't think that's the case. I think certain games and genres just open up more opportunities for people to talk to each other and engage with each other and interact with each other. And those interactions aren't always necessarily positive. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And following up on this theme, is there something that can be done on a community level in order to mitigate or even prevent these issues?
I don't think you will ever be able to prevent these issues, because I think players and communities just react differently, and every single individual reacts differently to different things. So it's very hard to say our community is always going to be a positive community. You're never going to have that. And this is purely based on my experiences handling many, many different types of communities. There will always be players out there who troll for the sake of trolling, and they enjoy doing that, and who will grief for the sake of griefing. And who'll cheat and hack the game. That's unfortunately a part of the landscape. But I think you can help manage those communities and manage them to make them as positive and as constructive and as inclusive and fun as they possibly can be. So putting down really strong policies, processes, and procedures really, really help. And when I say that, let me break it down. So, for example, like rules within your servers or your forums, or even in game, have those rules, those player rules, really, really clear. Have behavior guidelines. So, in your Discord server, make sure you've got your rules very clearly spelled out, and make sure that players sign up to them before they join into your Discord server. Ensure that you choose really fantastic mods. We are so blessed with our mods on our games. They're some of the most wonderful people that I've ever had a chance to work with, and they're so passionate about the game. They love the community, and they love being a part of the team, an extended part of the team. And I'm very, very, very happy and very lucky that we've landed on our feet with them. So when you're choosing your mods, think about their happiness and their fit with the game and the community as well. So choose from the community players who are dedicated to your game, who love your game as much as you love it. And it makes for a much more fun, easy, collaborative sphere for your mods to exist in. And by extension, they help represent your game and your brand and the rules that you stick by as well. So mods are really, really key, especially for places like Discord and your forums. And then think about rewarding and recognizing good players, as well as punishing and administering rules to misbehaving players. So think about how you want to thank your mods for their amazing work, call out really fantastic players who are streaming your game and showing other players how the game should be played. So think about how you want to do that as well. And communication, like communication, like for me, that is super, super key. Talk to your community constantly. Give them the opportunity to talk to you. Make sure that that conversation is not one way, and make sure that the players know that you're listening, that you're taking on board what they're saying. I'm a very firm believer that if someone takes the time and the energy to sit on your Discord server, or message or reply to a post in a very long form, passionate, detailed way, regardless of whether their criticism is like super angry or negative or not, it shows a genuine passion. I think if people didn't love your game or didn't love your product, then they just wouldn't bother investing that amount of energy and passion into a response. So sometimes when you get an initial negative feedback, don't dismiss it. Don't be like, oh, this person is trolling. This person is just having a go at us and being mean. Actually take the time to talk to them and figure out, like, exactly what their criticism is. Give them the time to listen to what they've got to say, because I really do think it comes from a place of genuine love and respect for the game, and they just want to see it do well. So put aside that time to talk to them, understand where they're coming from. And it could be that your efforts are, wasted, and they're looking for an excuse or a space to just vent. But it could also be that they're genuinely passionate about the game. They want to give you their feedback, and they've just not discovered a constructive way of doing it. And if you're able to extract that and turn that conversation around and make it constructive, and ensure them that you are listening, that you as a team are incorporating this, and make them into a constructive, helpful member of the community, then that's a huge win for you both. Like, that's not just a win for you as community manager to be able to show that you're supporting your players by listening really thoroughly and helping where possible, but it's also a great win for your community player to know that they are being listened and that they're being heard, and that their feedback really matters. And that's the key thing with direct player engagement and communication. So that's a really, really big thing for me. And I think when you combine all these in, it leads to hopefully a very thorough community plan as to how you're going to talk to your community, where you're going to talk to them, and when. Like, those three key things is planning out your communication approach, your content approach, and delivering to your community the content that they want to be listening to, and ensuring that you're showing them proof that what they're saying, their feedback, is actually going into that content, and that the team are listening to it. And whether they are delivering that content within the game itself, or in blogs or videos, you are showing that you're listening to community, you're taking on board what they're saying, and actually their participation, it has an actual positive effect on you, the community, the team, and the game as a whole. That was very rambly, but I hope that made sense.
No, not rambly at all. That's no, that was great. That was a very clear answer. And expanding a little bit on the topic, do you feel that the toxicity in games, is it just a reflection of the behavior in general on the internet, or is it worse in gaming?
I don't think it's worse in games. I think we work in games, so for us it feels like that is the case. But I actually think it's just indicative of the very anonymous, open nature of the internet, and the freedom that it kind of allows for people to express their likes and dislikes very, very strongly. And I don't think that is just effective with the games community alone. I think it is any form of entertainment or any form of yeah of a product when it's related to something that can cause great emotion and great responses. So I don't think games is the only industry that suffers from you know, negative behaviors and positive behaviors on the internet. I think it's general. When you look at films, when you look at TV shows, even books or music, you know, each of these industries have incredibly passionate and very, you know, creative and huge communities that are very loyal, very fired up and fueled up for their love of that product. So I don't think it is just the games industry. I think you're right in the sense that it is a reflection in general of the behavior of the internet. The internet, the mysterious internet.
Yes. Well, hopefully, in the future, things will get better, both on the internet and on gaming, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so, let's say that I have launched an online game, and the community, the players are extremely toxic. Um, is it possible to save this game that became notorious for having this terrible player base and be able to attract new players to it again?
Yes, I think it is possible, but it takes a lot of work. And I guess it depends how old the game is, how long the community has been toxic and unhappy for, and what tools and what content is available for you to be able to utilize in shifting that perception about. I think in this situation, it's not impossible. It just requires a huge amount of work and possibly a complete refresh, rebrand, and a new approach to handling your community overall. And I still think, I mean, I've mentioned this a couple of times now, but I also still think it comes down to very frank, honest communication. I'm certainly not saying that's the answer for everything, but I think it's a good place to start, and being as honest as you can with your community about the reasons as to why you're changing your approach and your method to handling communities, you know, is worth doing. It's worth kind of saying our community has become this. This isn't how we originally set out for it to be. We wanted this community. We want it to be a happy, constructive, inclusive, fun place for players to come play a game. It is no longer the case. To help it, we're going to do A, B, C, D, and E. And we're going to be, you know, more strict with ourselves as well as our community to enable us a chance to foster the community that we did want. And I think you have to be very hard on yourselves, but also very realistic about what this potentially could do to your community. If your community is very successful but incredibly unhappy and toxic, then by doing this change and this complete refresh, yes, you risk losing a big chunk of your community. So you have to ask yourself, are you prepared to do that? Are you prepared to lose that number of people and potentially that number of you know, income and that number of like investment for the sake of cleaning up your community space? So that's a business decision that you would have to sit down and think about as well. But you bear in mind that you know, if you want your game to be a long-term welcoming space that players want to come in and play with other players with, then changes do have to happen, and they're not easy changes.
That's great. So my games still have a chance then. But let's.
I think so, Jay. Just gotta work at it and make it happen. I'll help you out if I can.
There you go. But you know what? Enough about the bad aspects. Let's talk about the good side of community management. Uh, we all know how to punish bad players, right? To have the infamous ban hammer. We talked about this a while ago. But how a how a community manager can reward good community members?
Mm. This is like, my favorite bit of the job because it's a nice part of it. Yes, there are many, many ways that you can, and you should, like, seriously look at your community, look at the key outstanding players and recognize them. So, public recognition, whether that be call outs in game or in real life, or if you're streaming, there's, it doesn't cost you anything to call out amazing members of the community within your various servers, forums, spaces, etc. And especially if they're on that stream with you, incorporate them into things that you're doing, elevate them, and showcase them, and spotlight them, and give the rest of the community an opportunity to see, how great they are, and not in their contributions to the community, but within the game, and the game's ecosystem itself. These are the kind of players that you want to be advocating. So think about guest appearances, spotlights, and reward them. Are there ways that you can reward them in game? That makes a big difference to their gaming experience. Are they perhaps experienced veteran and they're helping out brand new players coming in? Reward them in game. Let them be able to enjoy the game more, but have the resources then to help out more new players. Or perhaps they are just amazing creatives within your community. Perhaps they're making amazing fan art, fan videos, or just fan content in general. Elevate them, like do blog spotlights, highlight them, do interviews with them, share that out across your channels, and showcase their amazing work, and get them involved. Perhaps give them opportunities to talk to their respective creative counterparts in the studio. So if it's someone's creating amazing fan art, give them an opportunity to talk to the creative art director or the designers of the game. Give them an opportunity to share creative ideas and thoughts. And I think with those things, they're pretty low hanging fruit depending on your studio and your own brand and your own approach, but they're really great moments of engagement for them, for the members of the community, and for you and your team as well. And then there's also nothing wrong with good old fashioned just merch. Say thank you to them with nice merch. If you've got some lying about, show your appreciation to your mods and your amazing streamers creating all of this great content about you, for you, with you, and show your thanks and appreciation that way. There's lots of ways, and lots of fun ways as well, that you can do that.
Awesome. So you know what? I gave up on my game that have the terrible player base that I mentioned previously.
Oh dear.
And you know what? I decided to start developing a new game. How and when should I start to maintain and foster a community?
I think this entirely depends on what your go-to-market plan is, and what your game's timeline and roadmap looks like. But from my perspective, ideally, from the get-go, if you can start building your community as early on as possible, especially for online multiplayer games, try and do that as early as possible. But have a think about what your game is. Have a real good think about the design, the world that it's created, and where you want it to go. Like, what is its future? Where do you envisage that future of the game to be? And from there, figure out about who you want to be playing your game, who those players are, how you foresee your community to be growing. Are they going to be masses of multiplayer people existing in this ecosystem doing their own thing, or are they going to be masses of players all interlinked and working together, or is it siloed pods of players experiencing the game together, or players just on their own doing their own thing? Have a genuine think about that, because that is all going to dictate who your community is, and for your community manager where they can find those players. And once that's been done, start talking to them as early as possible. Figure out the spaces, the digital platforms that they're on, and do research. Like, figure out where they are. Are they happier on Reddit? Are they happier in Discord? Are they more regularly seen on Twitter? Think about those kind of spaces. Or, do they just prefer really good long form blog content? Think about that and start adapting your content strategy and your plan towards those channels as well. And the moment you've got that plan, start engaging with them ASAP, and start with perhaps small focus testing groups, or reach out to small player fan bases that you think are a perfect fit. Start welcoming them into the community, start talking to them, and getting them involved with small scale play tests, like with your team or with you and the community team, and start slowly building up those foundations. And I think those foundations are absolutely core then to build the rest of your community on. So if you've built those foundations, they've got great strong communications, they've got great player understanding and great player feedback loop, then you've got pretty good solid roots with which to then start building out your community.
Great. And once I start this community, how do I keep it healthy, positive, interested, and engaged until the public launch of the game itself?
This is a tough one, especially when you don't have much to share. And I've worked for many titles that have been in this situation. And, I think it's fair to say that before early access, Scavengers was experienced similar peaks and troughs, in that we were very busy working on the game in behind the scenes, and there were periods of time when we didn't have much to share with the community. So it is tough if you don't have that content, if you don't have that info. If you do have lots to share and you have a very clear roadmap that you can share with your community, and you have active calendar of upcoming events, then communicate, share that information, plan it out, get your community involved, let them know that there's all this stuff happening in the background, which for Scavengers, we did wherever it was possible. If you don't have any of these things, then sit down and plan out what your timeline looks like. Look at where you're going to be hitting those key activation points, and look at the gaps that sit between them, and figure out what info you can share during those gaps. Maybe it's information leading up to an event, about the event, or if you don't have any of that, consider what I call always on / regular content. So that's a time where you can put out content that isn't directly related to something in game or something happening in game, but is more about a time where you can start to think about getting player feedback from the community. You know that there's a launch coming up, and you know that you're working on the game. The community know that you're working on the game. So open up that time to gather feedback, really important feedback from the community. Figure out what they want from you and from the game before it goes live. Like, give them an opportunity to actively be a part of that, potentially, like directly impact the game, and listen to them, and then incorporate that feedback into what you're doing. And when you then kind of hedge into the closer release period, start to show them how that feedback has been incorporated and is directly impacting your game. And then alongside that, do fun content, like do just nice, fun, easy content that can keep them excited. So if you've got concept art or sort of like work, like design work behind the scenes, if you can use them to tease, to kind of do sneak peeks, to show them some of the work that's going on behind the scenes, to reassure them that things are still happening, they're still progressing. You just can't share the full works right now, but give them that little bit of insight to keep them stay connected, to keep them still feeling involved in with the game. And there's a bunch of other things that you can do, with concept art or early art competitions. If it's so early on that perhaps there's a chance for them to actually help design something or help come up with ideas for something in the game. Think about those creative ways that you can get that conversation flowing, getting them feeling like they are very much a part of your design process, and their thoughts really matter into the final deliverance of the game itself. So yeah, there's loads of stuff, and actually that's probably one of my more enjoyable phases of a game, where you can get the community more involved in things, and be fun and creative with it at the same time.
Great. So let's wrap this conversation up. This has been amazing. Is there a final message that you want to leave to our listeners?
Just a massive thank you. Thank you for listening to me talk about community. It's always nice to sit down with a fellow community manager and be able to talk about all things community. But if you would like to see how we manage our communities and perhaps see some of the activation features that I've discussed about already, please do come check out Scavengers. Come join us on our official Scavengers Discord server. Check out our social channels and our blogs via our official Scavengers website. And hopefully you'll see some examples of the content that I've been talking about, some of the approaches, the processes, and the policies that I've kind of also mentioned as well. And I think Jay's going to put the links to all of this where this podcast is going to go out. So come along, say hi. We're a very friendly community team. We're always happy to chat and always happy to help you out, especially if you're new to the game. So yeah, hopefully we'll see you there.
Nee, thank you so much for your time. And if you enjoyed this chat, let us know on our Discord server or our forums. You can find the links right below. Thank you so much, and I see you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.